Before Victor Wembanyama was talked about as the most hyped prospect since LeBron James, a once-in-a-generation level talent that any team would be dying to get their hands on, losing as many games as possible to have the best odds of landing the number 1 pick to get him, was Zion Williamson. Tank for Zion was the phrase of any bottom-feeding team in the NBA in 2019, an insanely gifted and talented athletic freak that had the size and strength to bulldoze his way into the paint, but also possessed the leaping ability of a young Michael Jordan, elite scorer in his ability to post up, slash to the basket, sky high for lobs, the ball handling skills of a point guard, but also could crash the boards with his size and strength. The guy could do it all and was viewed to have unlimited potential as a future superstar in the NBA. And while all of that does still remain true to this day, as Zion is only 22 years old and hasn't hit the peak of his prime yet, Zion's career thus far hasn't panned out to what people thought it would be. And it leads some to believe, will we even be able to witness Zion Williamson at his peak, or will injuries prevent him from reaching his true potential? If you're new to the channel and you enjoy this type of content, then consider subscribing, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this all season long. Now, Zion Williamson was one of these players that was already being talked about well before he even started playing college basketball. People were amazed by his insane high school highlights of a kid with a build of an offensive lineman that had the quickness, agility, and athleticism of a highly skilled basketball player. Dude was performing in-game dunks that would otherwise only be seen in dunk contests. And while Zion wasn't actually the number 1 overall high school recruit in his senior year, yes, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, and Nasir Little were all ranked ahead of him, it was believed that Zion, as he continued to grow, become more lean, and build stamina, that he would be the prize of the NBA draft in 2019. And when Zion got to college, playing his freshman season at Duke, playing alongside RJ Barrett, who was the number 1 ranked recruit out of high school, it quickly became apparent that Williamson was the best player of his class with significantly more upside potential. And as NBA scouts started taking notice, the thought was that if you could land Zion, you were getting a future franchise player that you could build around to win a championship. Losing among rebuilding teams in the NBA that season was off the charts, with the Knicks finishing the season having only won 17 games. The Cavs and the Suns both had 19 wins that season, and the Bulls 22 wins. But of course, none of those teams landed the number 1 pick. In fact, none of them even landed the number 2 pick, a hard lesson for those who tank to get a generation level talent. Instead, the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that went 33-49 and had just a 6% chance of landing the Zion Williamson sweepstakes, were awarded the number 1 pick. You want to know how bad teams wanted Zion? Here's a live reaction of the Pelicans staff watching the draft lottery be announced for that number 1 pick. This was a New Orleans Pelicans team that knew they were about to be losing their current franchise player in Anthony Davis, who had been requesting a trade since the trade deadline earlier in that season, and everyone around the league knew he was all but out on his way to the Lakers. The Pelicans had just landed yet another franchise player, arguably the prospect of the decade, to replace Anthony Davis. Or did they? You see, as good as Zion has been when he's actually been on the court and healthy, getting him to remain on the court and being available to play has been another story entirely. Zion missed nearly 3/4 of his rookie season, having only played 24 games, which most of that was towards the end of the season, including the bubble. In his sophomore season, which was the only one where he remained healthy for most of the year, he played 61 of the available 72 games, 10 games less due to the shortened season after the bubble. Zion had a great season that year, was selected to his first All-Star game. Zion then went on to miss his entire 3rd season after he suffered a Jones fracture in the offseason that would require surgery. But despite the offseason injury and subsequent surgery, there was hope at that time that Zion would in fact still be ready to go by the start of the season, or at least only miss the first couple weeks of it. But as the weeks rolled on, the timeline for his return kept getting pushed out further and further, the team citing that the healing process was going slower than usual, and by the time March rolled around, the Pelicans announced that Zion would be shut down for the season. And of course, the focus at that time, everyone was talking about Zion's weight, how his frame and stature wasn't going to be able to support long-term success, especially in avoiding future injuries. But then, came back for this season, slimmed down, was just as quick and light on his feet as he was in his sophomore year, had even improved on the defensive end, putting up 26 points per game on 60% shooting with a PER of 25. He had significantly improved his overall passing and playmaking, 26 points, 7 rebounds, 4.6 assists, his most efficient and productive season thus far in his career. Gets selected as an all-star starter, and then Coming into the new year on January 2nd, it was announced that Zion would be sidelined due to a hamstring injury. This was just days after he put up a career high of 43 points against the Timberwolves. And, like a lot of his past injuries, the timeline for his return just continues to get pushed out. From an expected return to the end of January to then mid-February, it was announced that he would actually be out for multiple weeks from that time. And here we are in March, and we have yet to hear of a timeline for Zion's return with less than 20 games to go in the season. And with the amount of time he has missed since being out in early January, you'd have to expect there would be a ramp-up period for whenever he is in fact cleared to play. And at that point, you're getting close to the end of the year. Is there a world where it makes sense to just simply shut down Zion for the rest of the season? A season in which he has only played 29 games. Zion Williamson has played in 114 games over the course of his career since being drafted in 2019. By comparison, John Moran and RJ Barrett, who were drafted right after Zion, have played 240 and 257 games respectively. You have players drafted the year after Zion in 2020 who have played more games than he has. Hell, even guys drafted 2 years after Zion in 2021 have played more games than Zion himself. Evan Mobley has played in more games. Same with Jalen Green, Scotty Barnes, and Franz Wagner. And I don't want this to be a bashing Zion video just citing how the guy can't stay healthy. For me, it's more of the fact that we're being robbed of witnessing this once-in-a-generation talent and seeing his full potential be realized. Because when he's on the court, he's incredible. So fun and exciting to watch, impacts the game on so many levels, and when you see that he's doing all of this at the age of 22 with the ability to keep getting better, it's sad to see the guy just not being able to stay healthy. And then of course, it gets you to the point where you start to wonder if in fact Zion's potential will ever be fully realized, or is he going to have one of these careers that is cut short due to constant injuries. It's such a cliche thing to say, but it's so true. Availability is everything in the NBA. You can be a superstar level player, but if you're not consistently available for your team, and yes, I know injuries are out of a player's control, then it doesn't mean much. And it's unfortunate because the Pelicans desperately need him. You're talking about a team that earlier in the season, they were sitting on top of the Western Conference before Zion went down. And now, all the way to 12th in the West and 3 games below 500. Now, the middle of the West is incredibly tight. 3.5 games separate seeds 5 through 13, so there is a world in which the Pelicans do make the playoffs, even if it's by way of a play-in. And based on the remainder of their schedule, they do actually have a 44.8% chance of making the playoffs, according to basketballreference.com. But the point being, this team needs their franchise player. They need the guy that was expected to be this player that was going to dominate the league coming out of college. Hell, they need something to be excited about for a small market expansion franchise that hasn't been able to get past the second round of the playoffs since its inception back in 2002. A team that has been unable to retain 2 all-time greats and Hall of Famers in Chris Paul and Anthony Davis. And they have the pieces to do it. They have built an incredible team with young and up-and-coming players, bringing in vets like CJ McCollum, and still having draft assets to work with for the future from the Lakers and the Anthony Davis trade. This team has a ton of potential and a very bright future, but that future is highly dependent on the health and progress of Zion Williamson, who, by the way, they just gave a max contract extension to. And you hope, for Zion's sake, for the Pelicans' sake, hell, for NBA fans in general, that we will all be able to witness Zion Williamson fulfill his true potential that was expected of him before entering the league. It would be an absolute shame to see a talent like him have his career be cut short due to injuries. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Zion can and will reach his true potential and remain healthy? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.